So I'm sure you are all so eager to hear how my TV debut went on ABC Faith Friday. Yeah, it was a flop. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a reaction to people who are uh, especially, like DJs or television people who are trying so hard to see that this is going to be a holiday weekend and we're going to have a really good time. You know how they talk that way to, yeah, get you all excited so that you will drink a lot and eat a lot and dance a lot, and that's called having fun. But I just found myself afterwards so much reacting to this thing of when people try so hard to have fun. Yeah, it's like, folks, we're in a pandemic, and we can still have fun and we can laugh and we can enjoy each other's company. But why are we trying to make it this, exaggerated sense of happiness? Even if we aren't in the middle of a pandemic, why are we doing that? How about, I was thinking, 4th of July, shouldn't we be having some discussion about our nation's history? Yeah, wouldn't that be helpful, especially nowadays when we're really reassessing the country's history and people who used to be models are getting called out for other aspects of their life, which are not so reputable? you know, shouldn't we be talking about, what are the qualities that make somebody a good resident of a country? Yeah, when we live together with other people, what are our responsibilities? How can we enjoy being with people who are different? And I mean, this is the part of being an American that I really like. My high points are not the 4th of July. But when I go through immigration coming back into America, and you're standing in the line, and there's so many different people from so many different places who are citizens or green card holders, immigrants, whatever. And that makes me really proud to be an American, to have many different kind of people coming together. Now, I would really like to talk about that to celebrate 4th of July. And how do we build a more inclusive, society? And not just theoretically, but, how can I meet more people who are different from me? Yeah. And to me, that would be a lot of fun and that would be really interesting. And like I said before, really think a bit about the country's history and what we can learn from our history. Because if it wasn't um, plain before, it's plain now that after the Civil War, the government did not handle things properly. Yeah. And, Civil War was bad enough, and what came before it was bad enough. But afterwards, there was an opportunity to do things different. And it completely was not done properly at all. I mean, part of it happened to be because Lincoln was assassinated, but, part of it, just old habits, unwillingness to change, people not feeling heard, promises not being kept. And we're paying the suffering result of what happened. Yeah. And so, how did things go wrong then? And how can we prevent that now? Because it seems like now, you know, kind of the pandemic in some ways is a restart button in the same way the Civil War was a restart button. So, how can we, come back together? How can we make it through together and come back together afterwards? Um, really holding the ideals that this country was founded on. Okay. And, what I went through in my early 20s, back in the late 60s, early 70s, this thing of realizing, oh, the country is not what I was taught it was, because we were in the middle of the Vietnam War and race riots and the women's movement. And it was like, oh, they taught me, George Washington said, I can't lie, I chopped down the cherry tree. And, that was how we were always supposed to tell the truth in America. Except the government isn't doing that in terms of the Vietnam War. It's lying to us. So there was that kind of thing, And then also, as the years went on, I don't know if you had it too, but this sense of my early education in school, social studies, remember social studies? And civics class, how much that was lies. Yeah? My teachers didn't intend to lie to me. They was just teaching out of the textbook required by the state education board, but it was not accurate at all. And yet that's what I taught, that's what I learned, that's what I believed. And then, at all throughout your adult life, you realize, wait a minute, they taught us that we were founded on certain values, but people are not living according to those values. And it's not that just the citizens, our government, our leaders, our business, the business leaders, the people who are supposed to set the model, even religious leaders are not living according to that standard that we were taught as kids is what the country is about and what being a good resident of the country means. And then how to deal with that. I found myself over the years, really getting, I must say, angry. Why did they lie to me? Yeah, because I was also a teacher. Yeah, and I didn't teach, well, I was taught, I can't remember teaching social studies so much. I was doing other things, but surely this must have come in. And did I teach this same stuff simply because it was written in the curriculum book? Yeah, I tried to teach values as best as I could as a young 20-something, naive, know nothing teacher. Yeah, but, how are we bringing kids up now? And are we really, it seems to me we need to have a discussion about our country's values and how to live them, and a way to make it a communicating discussion. Yeah, I was reading this morning about a person who won in the Republican nomination. Yesterday they voted in a conservative area in Colorado. And she was really known in the county because she refused to serve her close her restaurant during the time when everybody was told to shelter at home, until she was finally given something by the police or the government telling her that she had to do it. And the picture of her, she was standing there in a restaurant with a holstered gun and her hand on the gun, and she tells her employees to open carry at work. Yeah, and the voters voted for her because she was new style. They had an incumbent who was, going on his 5th term. They didn't want him, but they wanted somebody like her. And I was thinking, now, why would you want your employees to open carry? Do they need it for safety? Do you think that this is the Old West and you're going to have a shootout in your restaurant? Like all the cowboy movies we watched as kids. Remember the cowboy movies? They're sitting eating in a restaurant, and then all of a sudden guys are shoving the tables back and forth and bringing out their guns and going boom, 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 and then jumping on their horse and riding out of town. How many of those movies did we, my generation, see as kids? Okay? Is that why you want people to, your employees, not just the customers, the employees, And I was thinking, now how do you have a real, I'd really like to understand that. How would I start a discussion? I'm not going to challenge, I don't want to have a discussion where I challenge her or accuse her or anything like that. I'm just curious. How does somebody think? Yeah, that wants to do that. Now, how would you have a discussion? And seeing how people nowadays are so, how we hold on so tightly to our own ideas. Even if I were open and relaxed, could the other side be open and relaxed, knowing that they were talking to a Buddhist nun who is probably one of those far left radical commie? But, to me, okay, you may say, oh, she's talking about sociology and politics again. No, I'm talking about how do human beings relate to each other as human beings? How do we connect with human beings with compassion? How do we open our minds to really listen to people who have other views without just recoiling from them? Yeah. And what do we have to do in our meditation practice to work on our minds, to get our minds to be like that, open and receptive? We can't tell other people what to do. They'll do or not do, but how can we work with our own minds to do that? And how can we become more accepting? And, how can we talk more honestly about our country's history, the good parts and the bad parts? Yeah. So that we can go forward. Because certainly, the principles that were explicitly laid out in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were great. They ignored a lot of things. Yeah, slavery was completely ignored when they wrote these documents. They didn't want to deal with it because it was too divisive. Yeah, so it came up later. But, the original things were really good. But how was it that most of these founding fathers had slaves? How did they think? Yeah. You say, well, it was just how people thought at that time and they were racist. But did they have conscience? Yeah. I mean, human beings are fascinating to me. And how do people, you may go along with a certain social view because everybody has it, but what about inside your own conscience? How do you feel about that? So anyway, this, I think, would be some really interesting discussions to have on the 4th of July. Yeah, and be able to open up and share and listen to each other about these kinds of things.